summer, there was an exhibit in Los Angeles entitled The 35 Days of Kevin Eastman, 35 days each celebrating each year that Heavy Metal magazine has been in print. It was a huge hit, and the third week of that event was entitled Biz and Buzz, celebrating the works that you two have done together. And on the Facebook event for that week, launching off, I typed in, "Will Biz be there?" And as a joke, someone wrote, "Yes, he will. Shh, don't tell anyone." And that night, the place was packed. It was swarming with people looking for the opportunity to see these two great artists and creators, legends together.
Now you're warming up now.
And today it is not a joke. So another round of applause, please.
Yeah.
There's the teeth between the both of them.
Yeah, look at these two somewhere.
Kevin,
That's sign of true legends.
I want to start off, that night, the opening of your event, we talked a little bit about the impact that the Frank Miller run of Daredevil had on you. Obviously, a lot of elements from that found their way into the Turtles, but also, you know, that panel layout, his whole art style seemed to impact you as well. I was wondering if you could repeat some of that, because it's very interesting.
Absolutely. I would say first that you know, Simon and I here today, we literally stand on the shoulders of giants in the sense that you know, I sat down next to Joe Sinnott on the convention floor signing yesterday, and I was like freaking out because I'm a huge Joe Sinnott fan. But it's guys like Jack Kirby, Joe Sinnott, Jerry Robinson, so many that came before us that inspired us to want to draw comic books. And thanks to us being fans of them, they get to inspire us. And thanks to fans like you guys that we get to make a living doing some pretty awesome things, and it's a pretty amazing job. Being a huge fan of comics, I remember enjoying Daredevil when Bob Brown and Gene Colan and those guys were doing it, and Roger McKenzie was writing. And I remember Daredevil 158, and this new guy comes along named Frank Miller, and started out as kind of a penciler, then quickly took over the series as writer, plotter, and really took a title that was about to be canceled and gave it such a rebirth of intensity and brought comics, I think, into the modern age at that time. It was funny, I mean, I was inspired by guys like Jack Kirby and Commandy, Richard Corbin for what he did, and guys like Dave Sim, who were self-publishers, Heavy Metal Magazine, Underground Publishing, and I really took self-publishing, Frank Miller, the most popular themes in comics at that time, from New Mutants to what Miller was doing with Ronin, and I picked the best and most popular thing, Peter Hunters, I should say, and we rolled them all into one thing called the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And we literally ripped off everybody to make our own idea, and thought we printed 3,000 copies and didn't think we'd sell one of them. And thanks to guys like you, we're doing it almost 30 years ago still. But it's funny, you were talking about things like, people would say, well, where did you come up with the idea of the origin of the Turtles? And the origin was when Daredevil was hit near the eyes, as young Matt Murdock, this canister of radioactive waste hit him near the eyes. Well, in the comic Daredevil, they never said what happened to that canister, so we continued the origin, where it continued bouncing down the street.
Drank it.
And Simon drank it. The canister bounced further down the street and smashed into this this boy that was holding this jar of turtles, and they all fell into the sewer. The evil Foot Clan came from Frank Miller's The Hand from that. Splinter came from Stick from Daredevil. I mean, parody, rip off.
It's interesting. It's interesting people talk about Frank Miller, because when I read comics as a child, I totally had nothing to do with it as a young adult. But when I saw Dark Knight Returns, it was like a kick in the head. I could not believe how comics have progressed, the violence and you know.
No, that's.
I mean, it was an amazing inspiration.
It was.
It really moved on.
That was a huge. I think that time we were all, because we're about the same age, even though sometimes I forget, he forgets because we're getting older. We're both going to be 50 this year. Actually, you just turned 50. I'm going to be 50 in a couple of years.
I got 50.
We both had a lot of work done.
I can't believe I'm 50.
That's why we look this good. We both had a lot of work done.
It's in each other's work, right?
Yeah. We got to get breasts next week.
Oh.
Well, bigger ones.
They'll never leave out. We know where bizarre now being better than
You know, that's very interesting you talk about the Dark Knight, because I've always wondered. No, I want to try and get that in top a little bit.
Good luck.
Good
luck. Really go out of control, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny, with Dark Knight, I was a fan of comics, but that made me go back to the comic store and start buying comics again. Things like Dark Knight and Watchmen and even like Watchmen, Swamp Thing and all that stuff. It was fantastic.
What really struck me about Batman was that there was that image where Batman was against the wall, he was bleeding.
Yeah.
I thought, wow, that didn't happen in comics.
It was pretty great. I have to imagine for people in comic books that it was a little bit like Sgt. Pepper in the 60s. You know, there's this famous story of the Beach Boys being excited about Pet Sounds coming out, and then they hear Sgt. Pepper, and wow, I've really got to up my game.
Total game changer, yeah. I mean, it was. And, you know, Frank Miller as a creator and an innovator from doing a project like Ronin, which was a massive influence on me. It was the first real, you know, powerhouse creator-owned project, and an artist that really had come into his own after, you know, we get to all watch him learn and experiment and excel so dramatically from Daredevil 158 to 191. And then he went on to do Ronin, but you look at everything from 300 to Sin City to Bad Boy that he did with Simon, which was a fantastic comic.
Was no one bought?
Check it out, buy it on
What did you say?
No one bought it, I think they did. No.
Really?
It didn't sell very well.
I liked it. I liked especially the new edition that came out with it. It's fantastic.
So, Simon, this is a convention that focuses on art. You know, that's really what this convention is about, comic book art. And, you know, so I'd like to ask you kind of a technical question early on in this panel, and that is, how can you be so awesome?
Very easily.
It seems like it's always been easy for you. Is that true? There's an
No,
interview.
that's one thing I do that, yeah, it's very, I think that one thing I can do well is that.
Was it,
Pretty much screw up everything else in my life, but yeah, I think I have no idea really.
was it always? You know,
Yes, it always has been, yeah. No, I mean, I'm literally, as a child, I don't know what you're going to say, so I'm jumping over, but as a child that people surrounded my work and very enthusiastic, and I wonder why everyone makes such a fuss on what I was doing, so I give that point then.
I have a perspective on that, and it's I've had the good fortune to work with Simon in the studio, and then occasionally he'd come around to California and we drink all the booze in the house.
Sometimes, just on the other occasion.
I'm kidding. No, I had a good fortune to work at Simon's studio for a couple weeks at a time here and here, and he's come over and worked 5 or 6 weeks at a time. And to me, this is what struck me as an artist and an inspired artist. I love to draw, I love what I do, and I work very, very hard for my drawings because I feel like every painting's a massive war, nothing comes out the way I want. The picture that I see in my mind never comes out as good as the picture I'm trying to put down on paper. I remember the first time I worked at a studio in Carterton, and Simon's working on this page, and he's got a big plate of curry that's covering half the painting on this page. There's Guinness cans and cigarette butts and shit fucking everywhere. The place is an absolute disaster zone. He's got a cigarette hanging on his mouth. He's got the cigarette hanging on his mouth, talking about a 350 Hemi something or other. And I'm just watching this work pour out of him, and I realize this guy is the real deal. He's a real artist, true. It's like from his balls to his bones, it's like, this is the shit. And it just comes out. And you know, I wrote it in the interest of his book, but he is a true natural talent in everything he does, and I watch him in incredible awe for everything he does.
How would you...
It's 50 this time.
You've been creating art for a very long time. What sort of developmental landmarks, you know, throughout your life? There's a famous story about Frazetta, as a young boy, being given criticism that he didn't know anatomy, and he took a George Bridgman book home and copied it all in one night, and he said, "Now I know anatomy." And it was done like that. Was there anything similar like that?
No, not at all, no. No, what I do is I do just distort anatomy. I found a way of actually making it look like it did understand anatomy.
How about you?
Well, I've never really studied it, really. I mean, obviously, you observe.
But muscles originating and inserting and different parts.
Yeah, pretty much. The thing is the muscles, the way they stretch, pull, and contract. And it's something I'm very much aware of.
How about your speed? You've said in some interviews that you feel.
Yeah.
How about you?
It just pours out. It literally pours out. Literally pours out. We're talking about pre-thinking a piece of work. I've never done that generally. It just literally there's everything there. It just comes out. Comes out.
There's a good story. We were actually related to that as we were working for, I don't know.
Play drums as well.
About 3 weeks trying to finish the story. This melting pot story. And it was running behind. So Eric and I were over there working in the studio, and he was finishing. I had to leave there with a finished cover for cover before. And so every day it would be, I'd start early in the morning, sort of subtle hints, like, hey, we gotta get around to that cover today, mate. And it kept going on for like the whole 2 weeks, and then the last day, Simon goes, you'll leave with this painting. And so he started it at about 9 o'clock at night, and the next day, like 16 hours later, I left with this painting. And it was the best one of the series. It was like, I just watched this literal explosion. And this
You know what, I think because it was a challenge, I was backed up. I always find I'm best when I'm backed up. I leave it, if I've got 5 days to do something, I wait till the last day, 5th day. I'm right in the corner, then I work hard. And if there's, I've got to try and prove something, because I've always been a very sort of physical person. I mean, to sit down in one spot, contain your brain is difficult.
It's got to be difficult.
So it has to be more of like a war, you know?
Shock therapy.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, shock therapy, yeah.
It's
Well, you know what I mean, it's like a sport of war.
I mean, are you ever frustrated with what you're doing, and have to start again, or you know, there's?
No.
Yeah, I can't picture you, throwing
There's
up.
always a way of bullshitting your way around things, you know. I mean, 50% of it is bullshitting your way through a picture. I mean, I'm surprised I've got away with it so far. You know?
Has anyone ever beat you in Pictionary?
You can take massive shortcuts and still appear like you've done regular work. That's like, for example, some commissions I do. What I do is I just do so much line work. There's so much stuff's going on. They just think there's more than there really is, you know. I just fool
Is
people.
it smoke and mirrors?
That's what it is, yeah. The worst thing is doing battle scenes. I hate doing battle scenes. There's lots of smudges and things, and a few arrows going over here, a few arms and legs.
Yeah, you said recently.
You know what I mean? It becomes more abstract.
You did, I'm sorry, you did, like the British, 2000 AD, when you were working for them, you did like 8 pages a week, wasn't it? Or some of those stuff, was that?
Yeah, we can have to do it. I need to.
No, I know, I've seen you do like, I mean, you used to tell me, and I've seen it actually, when you would do work on logo and things like that, you'd spend like 2 days, day and a half, 2 days doing the pencils, and then a couple of days doing the inks, doing like an entire issue.
It's a bit like people who write music or write poetry. It's just this thing that comes out, just like, it was Miles Davis, right? He said it's 2 takes. The second take they'll use. Any more after that, start repeating. You get repetitive. But I mean, that's a danger that you can get into. So I'm quite quick and slick. I can find ways of getting the work done. You know, and I became comparing myself. So it actually just become shorthand of what I was doing. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Then I had a period of time where work was pretty rough, but I'm much better than I was before. So
It is, I've seen some of the work you're doing lately.
It's all about me.
It's all great, but you know, it's funny, it's like I was reading this, I'm a huge Jack Kirby fan, as I mentioned, probably will mention him a lot more time.
Sure.
He used to do 4 books a month.
yeah,
He used to pencil, write pencil, 4 books a month, and I was reading Commandy again recently, and Chick Stone, Mike Royer was one of Kirby's favorite inkers, and he used to do the lettering for Kirby. And he was talking about working with Kirby in the beginning, and he used to have to ink 3 pages a day. Letter in the morning, 3 pages, and ink 3 pages a day to keep up with Kirby.
That's a burden. That's such a burden.
I've seen you do 2 pages a day. Like
Oh, I've done 5.
I believe it.
You know, but
I can do half of one.
But the thing is, you can really. Sometimes it takes a while for me to get involved. With the story, with doing pages. But you do go into another world. And what I don't do is read the entire script. I take each page as I go along. So it's always new to me, fresh to me. So it's always, so you become involved. I've become those characters who I draw, you know. Which is, what you asking the question, was it?
It doesn't matter.
It's a fascinating process, really is.
Kevin, have you become faster, over the years?
No, I haven't. In fact, it is by, artists or, by working with people like Simon. It's like, it does help. It's all about Simon.
But you don't.
No, but it is. It's true. It's like, you get older, you become a bit more economical, but you're still trying to. Because at the end of the day, it's like, what we do is not a group sport. It comes down to like you sitting in a room by yourself usually and working. And so it is lots of things you come up with to make it interesting. Whether it's reading the script the night you're doing the project, or what you're watching and listening to in the background. To also having the speed of the work keep up with your brain, so it keeps it interesting to you, so you can keep the quality up. So.
Do you do anything digitally?
No, I'm still pretty much just straight up I like the feeling of the pen on the paper. I've seen, I'm a huge fan of what I see that people do with the Wacom tablets and all this stuff, especially for conceptual design and visual stuff for video games and all that kind of stuff. And I'd like to learn that someday, but for now it is,
I mean, it seems the appeal of that is the speed, and you two don't need that to.
It's not laboured.
Good point.
It's not laboured. You work quickly, it's more spontaneous.
Mm-hmm. So,
And you get far much more movement in the work as well.
It's something else.
Very slowly, it can be very static.
We
do
get
you
something
like
we can sell.
digital artists?
No, right now. I mean, I'm not against the process, but I just absolutely just understand why you want to go digital. And end up not having an original painting. You can sell for the same amount of money you got paid for the original job. If it's stupid economics, it doesn't make no sense. Because if you want to do a painting, don't argue with me.
Okay.
No, it's that if you do a painting and it ends up being digitised anyway. Just another tool. I think there is some snobbery in there with the digital fanatics. They think it's better because the technology is new. Who cares? At the end of the day, it's what the end product looks like. Or it's achieved.
Well, I think artists make, there's many artists who make more mistakes than you do in their process. So,
you said they make mistakes.
you don't make any mistakes.
So that's kicking in.
How did you two first get together? You know, I see you both up here and I can't help but hear the odd couple theme in my head.
This is online dating. Match.com.
You both have glasses and tattoos, but he's definitely
It's
also.
getting worrying now, where's it going to go?
We're secretly married and nobody knows. No,
I'm sure
I was a huge Simon Bisley fan, and I started working out of an office. I opened up an office in the UK because we had started.
Who's your picture?
Let's not go.
Go on.
No.
We opened up an office in the UK.
Between blushing and losing my train. No, so I was opening up the office in the UK, and I was looking forward to meeting Simon, and he was showing me some of the work he was doing, which I'm pretty sure was the Judge Dredd Batman crossover, which was fantastic.
Judgment Gotham.
Yeah, Judgment Gotham, thank you. And I was working on this project Melting Pot, and I was looking for an artist to help me finish it. We sort of messed around and started working on that, and then really enjoyed the process. I think just hanging out together and spend half the time laughing and the rest of the time working. And it's just fun. It's a good, we kind of two brothers from other mothers.
What's the process like of working together on the art?
Which is good because Simon doesn't read, so I can just fucking. No, we actually.
I do Braille. I'm blind.
Yeah. No,
We
we
realise that. These were good eyes I've got. I've got no eyes whatsoever. There's sockets.
No, it's funny because
That was totally random thing. So me. Oh, where that came from.
I'm the clean one. I'm like. Simon messes everywhere. Clean that up. It's sort of like I think we worked.
You were just talking about a studio.
But it's like Ren and Stimpy. It's like like Stimpy, you idiot. It's like trying to be walking around like doing amazing things, and I'm always trying to control him. Come on, you Stimpy, you idiot. Let's go this way.
So talk about.
I wanted to say, sorry to go interrupting you, but
I'm used to it by now.
It's I think everything comes pretty much. It has always been pretty much instinctive. It's never. We didn't have to present. We don't formulate any way of working together. Just potential, just hand in love.
It's a weird sort of evolution. It's even like say anything we've ever set up with the intent to accomplish has one a bad idea and it never works that way. It's always sort of, and that's much like the working process of us doing stuff together. It's very organic. It's very natural. And even up to the creation of these characters we're doing called Biz and Buzz. We've been flown over to work on this game for Capcom. This heavy metal game. And in between, they put us in business class. In between us completely destroying the little island and separate us by drawing into this big circuitry board in Sharpie that we're going to have to replace when we landed in Japan. Drinking all the sake on the plane.
The bit between the seats. The bit where you put your arm, and it was like it was like an ochre colour, a pale ochre colour.
Yeah.
And I little pen, I made a little square. And I said, on. We can't do that, so I kept going and put a bit of wire coming from it. Before you know it, the whole entire Jack Kirby kind of like spaceship all over the place, all over our face and everything. There's no sacking on the plane there. And the guy was very polite, he never said a word, did he?
He kept hiding it, we knew he saw it, but we were so...
Mess. The worst thing of all, I wrote something on...
Oh, that was on the
remember that? I had a Sharpie, right? And
this is sleep, episode of Friends, and
I got a mark pen and gave Kevin this huge moustache like this. And I wrote this terrible word, but it was C, S with T, and monkey. up on his arm. And he got up and he got, and he got, I was like crying like a little child. It was hilarious. He was standing in the aisle, going down the aisle to get off the plane, to go through customs, this big mistake like this. And he saw it, he was furious. He was furious.
Oh,
The funny thing is, you have to wash it off before we went through customs. So we just already had this really red moustache. Not there. I heard cursing. Because you bastard.
That was on the way back. We did like on the way there. I was quite sure that the Japanese would bring back public beheading to get rid of us. We embarrassed ourselves, embarrassed the country. So Simon did this little doodle of him as this kind of Stimpy-looking character, me as this little Bren, you know, a little chihuahua character. And he said, "Well, this is going to be the last great adventure."
With no calf muscles.
I have no calf muscles.
Kevin has allegedly no calf muscles.
They've been removed.
They're like elastic bands between your knee and your ankle. But they're really knotty, kind of like really powerful. If you leave over houses and shit like that.
Fight or flight.
Yeah. People get bored now. Just go around them.
If you haven't read it, the first installment of Biz and Buzz is available on your website for download.
And the toys are available at the table. And there's only 3,000 of them. When I'm meeting with fathers.
We've had 3,000 for what? Was it 10 years now? I said to Kevin, the heavy metal, the women paintings I did, they were made of Canada. I said, Kevin, I was never sent one of those calendars. He said, well, we still have all of those. How many do you want? We still have 5,000 of these things. So we're going to do like make houses out of it.
I've given up Christmas gifts every year. Like,
Everybody gets it for free. It'd be very nice to sell something, wouldn't it?
Biz and Buzz toys.
Yeah, if you haven't already, be sure to check out both your website and also you.
There's heavy metal virus on the website. There's a virus on the heavy metal website. Is that down?
What happened?
There's a virus on the heavy metal website.
There's a virus
Today?
on the heavy metal website?
I mean, a few months ago.
Well, I hope it's gone now.
Are you sure?
All of the heavy metal issues you can
You
have
can put
on
up
your
viruses.
website.
It's a virus I set up there. It'll suck all the money out of your credit cards.
I got viruses on the edge.
The calendar.
Simon, you just recently set up a YouTube channel, is that correct?
Sorry.
You set up a YouTube channel, Biz TV, Simon Bisley. There's a whole bunch of interviews that came out there. I urge everyone to check
Well, they're
out.
kind of like, sort of spontaneous.
They're all very fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, I know everyone here is obviously a fan, and they're worth checking
They're
out.
always interesting, they're always fun to it, especially in an environment where you're in your own home.
And,
It's
you
more
know,
comfortable, it's more comfortable, so you can just like,
and if you think that Kevin is exaggerating about what a disaster area your studio is, you should check it out. It looks like a
Thank
bomb
you.
went off. You know,
like
off
a
camera,
house.
you have to wonder, you know, how far away Carrie Elways is handcuffed to a sink by his foot.
well, things are working, it's a working environment, I'm not pressed about what the place looks like. I mean, I think it's, if you're an artist, I don't see why, I have no time to put the lid back on a painted tube.
Well,
How's that part of the process of the work? You need to put it on there, get it on there. Shift it around, that's the paint's done. If there's a mess, it's a mess. I'm not going to be putting anything down until I finish it.
Neatly arranged all by number.
Yeah, but you're going to just a studio, working place. Actually, people think, I think people assume I live there. That's how I live, you know. But they say, hey, this is my house.
No,
It's a tiny little room.
what's fascinating is like
There's a cut painting.
How far away is it from where you live?
Well, it's the same building.
It's the same
It's
building.
like it's an extension of a house.
Mhm.
It's like it actually was just like a cellar type thing. You restore jam and dead animals. You know what I mean? I thought, well, I'll use that because I used to smoke quite a lot.
How long
And I
is
was
it?
there was a little smoke in the house, but I was basically kicked in there. You know.
How long has it been in your
Punishment,
studio?
Let me finish the words. Don't matter.
How long has it been your studio?
For 20. Actually, I'm not there anymore. Back in the house, I stopped smoking.
You stopped
The
smoking?
main
back-
reason was actually in the cellar.
He's saying
Because I smoked a lot, and I think it's because of the American time. When I was in bed in England, the phones would be going off, and I'd be speaking through the early hours of the morning. So I really gets better with waking everybody up because the phone was on all the time. That doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense to me.
He's saying you have to get a dirigible.
He made all that section out completely. No, so yeah, I work in the house now. Like I did before.
Full circle.
Oh my God.
You two appeared together in the documentary on Frank was at a Pain for Byron,
Yeah.
which everyone should check out. It's wonderful.
That's
Excellent,
Yes.
applaud that.
He's a man. He's a man.
No, he's, you know, it's a,
Rosetta?
Oh, it's coming, of course,
Yeah, the movie ends with a quote, it's not the final statement in there, from Roger Reed, who appeared in there. And he was saying, I think the ground that Rosetta broke in portraying his figures in a different way that had never been seen before will unfortunately be largely forgotten in 100, 200 years. And it really bothered me that that was sort of the last line of the film.
that's lame.
Who said that?
Roger Reed, who's interviews,
Did he paint or draw or do anything interesting? Did he just?
he was an historian.
Yeah, we don't know. Frank Rosetta, everybody knows.
Yeah.
He was a rocker.
No, I think that's not true. I think, Frank's a legend. But the thing is, it's a bit unfortunate that there was trouble with the Frank Rosetta gallery. So I don't know what's going on with that, but makes you wonder that, I'm surprised America hasn't given a great deal of homage and built the place. It's supposed to be there for a memorial museum or something.
He's got a museum.
I mean,
place.
one of the greatest artists in the world, ever. I mean,
Yeah.
an incredible American, whatnot.
Well,
So that's how they call it, you know what I mean? It should be a fucking statue of him.
Exactly.
No, there was actually.
Especially Frank.
No, they're doing good news on that. I mean, one of the cool things, we're working on a heavy metal project with Robert Rodriguez, but he's also doing, besides Sin City 2, which Sin City 1 was awesome, he's also doing a live-action version of Fire and Ice. He's a huge Rosetta fan, and he's actually building in Austin a new Rosetta museum. And actually, because he felt the same, he was like, he's been over to the Rosettas and seen everything. He said there should be a museum with a snapshot of the
Absolutely,
And so he's actually creating environments where you'll see paintings in certain settings themed out to fit the sort of the scenes and a proper region. That'll be in Austin, Texas. He's working on that now. I think they'll probably help it out.
I mean, I've not had a phone call from him.
Rodriguez?
Yeah.
He's called you several times.
Unless you were Rodriguez.
Kevin, obviously, you've owned Heavy Metal Magazine for a while, and recently we lost a very important person in the history of heavy metal, Mobius, who was, you had a quote from him on your website recently. Could you talk just about a little, this comic book convention, about how great a loss that was for comics?
Oh, it was epic, and I really, I think that around the time I was kind of getting bored with American comics. Under the Comics Code Authority, by the time you get about 12 or 13, they become very sort of generic, they really take it so far. About the time that I was becoming bored with comics as a medium, as I was growing older than that, along comes heavy metal. And heavy metal is mainly comics that the first issues split between European creators and up-and-coming American artists, or underground artists like Richard Corbin and Von Bodie from America. But for the first time, to American audiences, we get to see guys like Mobius, Iki Belial, Drew Ye, and these guys, and it was simply mind-blowing. I mean, much like we talked about Frank Miller and The Dark Knight, what that did, what heavy metal did to us in introducing us to guys like Mobius. It made us realize that you can tell any kind of story you want with comics in comic form. Historical, future, any time period, any medium, any story, anything you want to do, those are possible. And that was a huge revelation to me, because I thought it had to be, we always said that we grow up and maybe one day we get to draw Spider-Man or something, but no, you could draw anything you wanted to. So I go back into comics with a vicious.
Well, you're still pushing. Heavy metal is, very important, for the history of comics. So just thank you so much for, keeping it going. And
it's a great magazine to be a steward of, and I'm gonna, it's a huge fan of it for 35 years, publisher of it for 21 years, and this is the 35th year, and Simon, it's an interesting, us being on the panel, I think Simon's been on more heavy metal covers than just about any other artist we've done.
So it's just bank moment, but they were other artists.
I would have Bisley covers on everyone.
No, I mean, Kevin over the years has done great favours and employed me. Well, thank you for that. All kids through school, all sorts of. I don't know, great deal of work, so thank you.
Cheers.
Clap.
So, clap, Any more questions? No. Okay, we still got more time. Okay. So you've recently gotten back into the Turtles and doing some stuff for IDW, and there's some pages that just went up for auction that were absolutely beautiful. You're really at the top of your game art-wise. Talk about that whole process of getting back into the Turtles.
Thank you. No, what's interesting is what's funny is the last turtle story I did was with Simon. We did this book called Body Count, and
which was wonderful. Go to the floor right now and pick it up.
Thank you. And it wasn't like the last story. None of it was done with any intent or with any specific intent or malice or anything. Like around the time that we did Body Count, I was just starting on the second heavy metal movie, which you don't see it, it's terrible. But we were starting on and other things. And Simon was visiting. We were visiting in Northampton. Talking about all the projects we want to do together, and I wanted him to do a turtle thing, and I showed him these John Woo movies, and Simon said, well, let's do the longest running gunfight in comics, and so we did this 100-page book called Body Count, which was one of my favorite turtle stories and a fan favorite. So, but although since '96 to now, turtles have always been a part of everything, because every convention, every show, I get the most awesome fans coming up with sketches and great to chat about this, that, and the other thing published, and then when Pete sold, I sold my interest to Pete many years ago. Pete sold to Viacom recently, and then they started this relaunch process where IDW picked up the comic rights, and they said, hey, do you want to do a couple covers? And I said, yes, absolutely. And I said, what do you got in mind for a story? And I went down and met with the incredible Tom Waltz and the guys down at IDW. Tom's the head writer, and he told me basically what he was planning to do, and I just thought it was fantastic. And so we started collaborating more and more on the story. I started doing covers, then they asked me to do layouts for the first 4. So now I'm doing covers, layouts, and working on a new Turtles graphic novel that would be a Turtles annual. That's 48 pages that I'm writing and drawing. I'm going to bribe Simon to do the cover with me on that. And that'll be in October. But one of the things I just want to say is that it's been the most incredible experience for me going back to working on the Turtles, because it reminded me about a couple things. How much, one, I love drawing, how much I love drawing comics, and 2, how much I love drawing the Turtles. Again, not that I was ever that far from it, but I hadn't specifically worked on it, and I really hadn't told a linear story in 100-page of turtle layouts since '96 when working with Simon. So it's been an incredible welcome back, and I still can't believe that you guys are standing in line for 5 hours and 4 hours to see me to sign autographs today, and that's a huge, huge, huge compliment, and thank you very, very much. It's awesome.
The sort of phenomenon of the Turtles when it first came out was a big surprise, and all of a sudden there was all this merchandise. You were really living the comic book dream that everyone talks about, even though people didn't know what it was. But it's important to just say this out loud. The quality of the comic book never went down. You guys did not phone it in. I mean, when movies were being prepped, you were doing Return to New York, which was wonderful. It was a wonderful, wonderful turtle story. So it's always great to see people not jump the shark ever. So.
Well, thank you very much. It's a huge compliment as well.
So can you talk a little bit about what's going on with the new Turtles movie? I know there's a lot of interest in that. There's a lot of criticism about that. You know better than anyone, so let's set it straight.
Sure. No, I'll preface it by saying, like, when you look at one of the coolest things that we did, what a lot of people don't realize, or the hardcore fans certainly do, is that the entire Turtle universe was founded on 15 issues that Peter and I did together, issues 1 through 11 plus the 4 one-shots. We did go back and I did individual issues, Pete did individual issues, we did the Return to New York series and Turtles 50, but in between that we got to work with a lot of really amazing artists that brought really incredible visions to the Turtles, and it was interesting to me, when we have these news guys come up and write a story with the Sets and Rick Beach and Mark Bodie's, and that it was fascinating, the ideas and the places they would take it. When we specifically, and all the black and white comics were all written specifically for what Peter and I wanted to read, do, or what we thought was interesting as a comic. When we started doing the animated series, it was the first time we knew that we were writing very much specifically for a specific audience. It was a 6-year-old boy, instead of, which Peter and I aren't that far off from that mentally, but all the black and white comics were edgier and older, intended for an older audience. So when we worked on the animated series and the toys, it was done for a much younger audience and with specificity. So different colored bandanas and those kind of things. And when you look back at some of the ludicrous and loony ideas that we did in the animated series, it was perfect for that world, for that environment, for a much younger audience. I mean, we did some insane stuff that makes, if Michael Bay was doing them as aliens, would make like what we did before seem even more ludicrous. But that's not the point. The point is,
The whole thing's ludicrous for the get-go, isn't it? I mean, we can go with that.
well, you start with an idea of sort of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles should go to a lot of places, but there's still the respect that, you know, every one of these people in this room have found the Turtles and have found doing these shows in a multitude of different ways. Some found it from playing the video game and then realized there was an animated series and there was a black and white comic. Some found it through the comic, and then hated the animated series and everything else that came after that. Some found it through the animation and came into it that way. And what was interesting when we did the IDW series is that the idea was to specifically connect all those worlds to a new platform where we tell ideas, connect the animated series with the tone and the flavor and the spirit of the original series, and then take into account the 4Kids entertainment version of the Turtles, which is a bit edgier, darker, and bits and pieces from the movies, and string it together. And that's one particular Turtle universe, kind of like we had in the old days. We always kept the black and white comic when everything else was going on. And then with the animated series that Ciro Neely's spearheading for Nickelodeon, it's absolutely fantastic. The stories are lighter, the Turtles are a bit younger, the handling is more comedic, but contemporary comedy as opposed to what, you know, like the Turtles Forever was a perfect example. Did you ever see Turtles Forever? The 80s Turtles with the 4Kids Turtles and the original black and white comics. Those are the three worlds of the Turtles. And I sat with, you know, and then jumping from the animated series to the movie, I sat with Josh Applebaum and Andre Nemeth, who are writing the new series. After I'd spent 2 years working with John Fusco on a new version of kind of the Batman Begins version of the first Turtle movie, which was scrapped by Paramount. And then Nemeth and Applebaum came in with a specific set of concepts and notes, all related in great respect and homage to all the stuff that's come before. Eastman came in as director at the same time Michael Bay and Platinum Dunes came on as a production company. And their intent is to make the most kick-ass, most awesome, martial arts heavy, true to the spirit of the Turtles movie ever, period. And that's, so when I look at like, you know, Michael Bay, who really hadn't, say, completely been brought up 100 up, so setting up the speed of what the story was yet, he just come on Transformers and literally just was walking the door. He said the Turtles are going to be aliens. Well, you know, if you look back to the ooze, is an alien substance that goes back to Turtles issue 2 and 3 and 4. And so there is an element of Turtles having an alien background, but that's all I'm going to tell you. But the rest of the story is going to be something that I think you'll...
I thought it was the Daredevil canister.
Well, then you know that even the Daredevil canister, they never said where the radioactive ooze and the Daredevil canister came from. So that's where we wrote this whole backstory.
So Daredevil's an alien. Learned something new.
So we're working on the, and the story is still ongoing. We're developing it. We're writing it now. Been officially hired to work as designer. We're having a blast, much like I worked. They brought me in on the Turtle series, the comic series, and the animated series. You'll love it. I like it.
Yes. Simon, we're going to go to questions quickly, but can you talk a little bit about what you're working on now, what's coming out? And just mention briefly, I hate to put you on the spot like this, your Bible project, which is listed as unfinished. Is that going to be finished?
Well, it's never going to finish, is it? I mean, it can go on forever. I mean, obviously.
Are you, well, what are your plans with it? I'm
not really considering it, rather.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
What are
I think
you
I want to do if anything, really large scale, really pieces, huge scale.
And are you having a lot of fun with that?
I'm looking for a church to paint, you know, so like Michelangelo. I just have to go over the top, but that's what I want to do. I want a Sistine Chapel, Bisley Sistine Chapel. It's a big project, you know, that's what I want to do.
And we would love to see you do that.
Yeah.
We really would. You know, and
I mean, I don't know.
Uncompleted.
I've said, yeah, you let me do it. You know? My record, anyway.
The Bible project you can download from heavymetal.com. Is that correct? Okay, so it's just beautiful, beautiful stuff. Check it out. And what are you working on now? What's coming up?
I'm currently working on, still working on Hellblazer as a part-time artist. We've got Matt Wagner and I doing the legendary Tower, which is his free badges everyone's wearing. So that's a lot of pages, that's like 1,000 pages.
It's a lot. Well,
it's really, I tell you, it's really good fun too. It is good fun.
It's a good thing you're fast.
You've got 3 pounds of pages from action shots and stuff. I'm just penciling it, pure penciling it. It's right to do because going to the inks It's like just repeating it all over again, you know what I mean? So that's what it's done.
How do you evaluate yourself as an anchor? Do you in college?
I'm really bad anchor, really bad anchor. I'm certainly not
How can you say that?
Something I think I'm very good. That's something I'm really scratching, and that's not very good.
What anchors do you like? What anchors do you like Barry Windsor Smith as an anchor?
Of course, yeah. Who doesn't? I mean, I think, what's his name? There's one guy, I forget who he is.
Bisley.
There's a guy, he's doing, you think he's that guy? Well, obviously Neil Adams.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I think pretty much everyone can ink that line down.
How many pages
So,
was
I'm
it?
getting 4 months. The thing is, I bullshit my way through things again. It's like with Hellboy, they're inking it. I do pencils and rendering, yeah, and use something. So that's my strength. For example, that's the reason why I painted Slain, or God, because Fabry had done it in Pandemic. It's stunning, Fabry's work today. So I thought the only way I could make my mark was by painting it and make it different. Because you could really, mould things and disguise a lot of things and weaknesses in paint. So that was very exciting actually, those days.
What's it, the other thing?
I've got plenty going on there.
Your new project?
I'm working, that's the main thing I'm working in.
For
Food at the table for the kids and the house, the roof for the kids.
gas in it.
Carry on. Well, I'm doing Superman as well.
Tell us about that.
I can't really talk about it, but it's
You can't tell you doing Superman.
it's really like a
Simon Superman coming
it's
out.
like a game sort of thing that
I'm doing Superman too, and I can't talk about it.
it's very weird doing Superman.
Now, Superman, we can all agree, is an alien. We're told we're out of time. Big round of applause. Thank you so much.
Sorry, just trying to ask us at the